All right, folks, welcome to the MMOA podcast. My name is Dustin Jones, one of the older adult faculty members with the Institute of Clinical Excellence, and we have two very special guests today where we're going to talk about a recent publication related to some normative values for the 5 times sit to stand and maybe some other outcome measures as well for folks over 90. And if you are a Jerry PT, OT clinician, you know how much this is needed. So I wanted to get these two amazing individuals on here to just discuss the study and some of the things that they learned. I'm going to introduce them, read their bios real quick, and then we're going to get right into what they learned, going through this process and some of the data they published. So we have Nikki Arnold, Dr. Nikki Arnold. She's a board-certified geriatric physical therapist with over 20 years as a clinician, and 18 of those are in home health and or hospice. She's passionate about caring for the geriatric population with the ultimate goal of promoting safe and successful aging. She's been a guest lecturer with OSU Cascades DPT program. That's Oklahoma State University, right? Or Oregon State. Sorry, Oregon State. I read that as Ohio State. For the West Coasters, Oregon State has collaborated with the 90 Plus study on several research papers. She currently works for Partners in Care in Bend, Oregon, a lovely, lovely town with so much to do outside. But it's a local nonprofit home health, hospice, and palliative care agency. So that's Nikki. And then Katherine. These are PT school classmates, which I love, right? So Katherine Colcord is a physical therapist with over 10 years of experience in inpatient neuro rehab and home health care. She has recently completed her PhD in epidemiology at the University of California, Irvine, which just recently defended her dissertations. Quick round of applause for Katherine. During her training, she worked with the 90 Plus study, a large community-based study of aging and dementia in individuals 90 years and older. Katherine has published multiple papers on reference values for the 90 plus age group and has also explored factors related to falls in this group. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on. So both of you, Nikki, Katherine, thank you for joining. I'm really excited to talk with y'all about this study, but I want to hear first, because I think this is pretty unique. You all went to PT school together, right? Friends. How in the world did you all kind of, reconnect or had the idea of publishing a study together? How did that come about? Either one of y'all, feel free to take this.
Well, I think it came about pretty organically. Nikki had just completed her board certification in geriatrics, and I had just started working with the 90 Plus study, and we kind of started talking about we need to do a project together. We need to collaborate, and it was really important for me, kind of being on the academic side, to have someone who is still working clinically, working on this project with me. And so, yeah, it came together pretty easily.
Yeah, we never really disconnected. So when I heard about her gait speed over 90 study, it just got me really excited about doing some further research with the 90 plus study with her.
That's cool. And I imagine, yeah, Nikki, like clinically or in the home, right? Like you're probably running all these tests and you have so many patients that, are aged out of the norm. So it's difficult to interpret, those scores. And yeah, that's really cool to see. You're aware of the need, you see it. And then Katherine, you're aware of it as well, from the research side, and for you all to, with your powers combined to be able to contribute to solving, I'd say a pretty big problem in the realm of geriatrics is awesome. So let's start off with just giving some context to the 90 plus study. What is it? What are the goals? Yeah, just kind of a general overall view if anyone's never heard of the 90 plus study.
So the 90 Plus study is this amazing, huge study of people who are 90 and older. It's one of the largest in existence right now. And it's been going on since 2003. It actually derived from a previous study called the Leisure World Cohort Study that started in a retirement community in Orange County back in 1981. And then in 2003, basically everyone who had been part of that study who was now 90 or older was invited to join the 90 Plus study. And now the study has over 2,000 participants. They've started recruiting volunteers from the community in recent years, and they have a brain autopsy study. They have a imaging study. They do evaluations every 6 months with physical performance and neurological testing, and they do a lot of research on dementia as well.
So this cohort, 2,000 some individuals, how often are they gathering data on these individuals?
So they have visits every 6 months throughout
Wow.
this. Mhm.
That's pretty incredible. And more frequent than what I was expecting, to be honest, but that's awesome. So that the 90 plus study, and for listeners, viewers, I'll link to this and any relevant articles that we talk about. I'll put links in the show notes. And so we've got this large group of very, very special people that we've been following, or you all have been following for quite some time, right? And so now we're starting to get some data to where we can analyze this data and start to establish some norms, right? What is normal for a particular age group? I mean, so many different ways that we can break it down. So your all's recent publication was the 5 times sit to stand test. So before we really get into that one, Nikki, you mentioned the gait speed publication that Katherine had. Was that with the 90 plus study? And what other kind of interesting publications from your all's perspective have come out of that group, that 90 plus study?
Yeah, so we have published 2 other norms papers or reference values papers. One is with the 90 plus study, the gait speed paper, and then we also published another reference values study for gait speed with another large 90 plus cohort study called the Life After 90 study, which is another study that has over 1,300 individuals who are 90 and older, and it's based in Northern California, and its emphasis is having a multi-ethnic cohort. So we have another paper based on that cohort with gait speed reference values as well. We've also been studying falls in the 90 plus study, and we published a paper in gerontology about falls in the oldest old and looking specifically at assistive device use and how gender and living situation also plays into falls in this group.
Wow. Awesome. Links to all those will be in the show notes for everyone watching and listening. So, and I can only imagine that's going to continue. I mean, just the publications from this cohort are just going to continue to ramp up, maybe even accelerate. I can only imagine. But so you all had the 5 times sit to stand study. So for those that are listening that may not be aware of that test, very common outcome measure, especially in geriatrics, where you're timing how quickly someone can stand up and sit down 5 times, standard, without the use of arms. Nikki, from the clinical standpoint, when you ran some of these numbers and saw some of these scores, or just kind of being involved in this study, what were some of your biggest takeaways and even surprises that you weren't expecting when you got into the weeds with the data?
Yeah, well, just my biggest takeaway is just so right now, 30% of my population, my patient load is 90 and over. So just having this paper just to help advocate for them is just such a great resource. I can't tell you how often this demographic just feels kind of forgotten from the family, from the medical population. And just having this, like they'll ask me, we'll do the 5 times sit stand test. It's my go-to gold standard really in the home. There's always going to be a chair you can do it at. Sometimes you don't even have enough space safely to do a tug. So just having the data available to give to our patients just lifts them up so much, gives
Yeah.
them hope, lets them know that they're not forgotten about, lets them know that there's reference values for those that are their age. Because before we had to use, oh, well, I don't have data for your age, but the 80 to 89-year-olds can do it in this. And then they just, they weren't very happy with that.
Yeah.
So,
That's
so
awesome.
I guess, I mean, I'm really happy that Catherine and everyone decided to include the modified version because in the home, that's probably 75% of my patients over 90 are doing the modified version.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for those that haven't read the study, they published the modified version where they're going to use upper extremity support, and And that's huge. From your all's perspective, like, is there much normative data out there for a modified 5 times sit to stand test in general?
No, we were just talking about that. I haven't seen it for any of the other age groups.
Yeah, which that's pretty eye opening, right? Because like Nikki said, I mean, especially in the home setting, I think in the SNF as well. I experienced that is that's probably the most common standard, if you will, of that test or the modification, and to not have normative data for that. Yeah, like I think it's a huge opportunity. I think a surprise for me, Nikki and Catherine, is when the norms that you published for the standard 5 times sit to stand test. I was really impressed with what their average scores were with the deviations. They're cooking. I mean, they absolutely crushed that. And I'm curious, like with this cohort, do they skew relatively healthy in compared to the quote unquote normal, 90 plus individual? Yeah, like what's kind of the general characteristic of someone in this study? Because I was really surprised by some of those scores in terms they were pretty fast.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the 90 plus study, I would say participants are, all at one time they all lived in this specific area in Southern California. And so in general, they're kind of a highly educated group. A large percentage are white and female. And so, there's a possibility that they scores may skew a little bit high, but at the same time, they're pretty representative of the 90 plus population at this point in time. And there are also a lot of efforts are made to include everyone in order to make the data as generalizable as possible. So we travel to people's homes if they can't come into the clinic to do the testing. We even travel, if someone moves out of state, we even travel out of state to go and visit them and do the testing. And, we include participants who are cognitively impaired, who, even if they can't answer questions for themselves, we allow an informant to answer a question for them, like a relative or a caregiver. And so in this way, we feel like, this population is pretty representative of the 90 plus population overall.
Yeah, that's awesome. So so we have some normative values broken up based on age, and let me pull up the table real quick. So when you all look at this study, it's broken up based on gender, traditional 5 times sit to stand test and the modified version, and then 90 to 91 year olds, 92 to 94, 95 and above, and then kind of overall just over 90. Um, do you see is there a day coming where we will have, cutoff scores for certain health outcomes with this data set in terms of, if you get, above this particular number, you're at an elevated risk of a fall, for example, with this age group. Is that coming down the pike, you think?
I definitely think that's an important next step. It's something that Nikki and I have talked about a lot, and I've talked about with the group as well, for both gait speed and the 5 times sit to stand test. If you look at the most common cut points for actually both of those, for gait speed, we always think of 1 meter per second as our most common cut point for slow gait speed. And in the 90 plus study, over 90% of the participants would qualify as having a slow gait speed if we look at that cut point. 5 times sit to stand test, I mostly have heard 12 seconds. Other people have heard maybe 15 or other numbers, 10. And when I looked at that in the 90 plus study, we had about 88% of the participants would qualify as having a slow 5 times sit to stand test time. But it doesn't really mean that they're all going to have an adverse event, or that even that many are going to have an adverse event. So we published a paper on fall showing that the prevalence of a fall at baseline in our study was under 50%. So fewer than half of the participants were falling in a given year. And so I think we do need more new cut points for all of these physical performance measures so that we can really identify within the 90 plus population who's at risk.
Yeah. So Yeah, that's huge. So we have the 5 times hit the stand, we have the gait speed. What other outcome measures are being recorded with the 90 plus study?
So we have used the short physical performance battery. So within that battery, there's 3 balance tests. There's, let's see, what are they? Side by side stand, modified tandem, and tandem stand. And that's something that I would like to look at further, maybe as a next step to develop some reference values based on that data. We also have grip strength, um, and
And that's awesome. I mean,
oh,
just
and the Tenetti. We have the Tenetti.
the 1080. Okay, yeah. Yeah, just to get the norms and potential cutoffs down the road, for all those are like, big heavy hitting outcome measures that so many folks are familiar with. That's going to be really awesome. So I appreciate you all, doing this and just identifying the problem and doing something about it. That's really cool to see when when you have clinicians that are consuming some of this information, these numbers, like what do you want clinicians to walk away with? How do you want their practice to be different as a result of the work that both of you all have done? I'll just let both of you all respond to that.
Go ahead. Do you want to start, Nikki?
Sure. I mean, I just want them to be able, again, just be able to advocate for their patients to have numbers to go off of, to help with discharge planning, or are they safe to go home? Where do they fall in the norms? And just to help empower the patients.
Yeah, huge need, huge need, especially yeah, like the setting that you're in, Nikki. With home health, hospice. Yeah, that's a huge, huge need. I appreciate you sharing that. What about you, Catherine?
I think for me, it's really important that we start thinking about the 90 plus population as a separate category of older adults with their own kind of unique needs and challenges, but also with a lot of potential. Just by definition, this is kind of a group that is very resilient. And I think that it's really important that we start kind of understanding that this is a separate group. Yes, they may have, some challenges, things that we need to do differently. What works for someone who's 65 might not always work for someone who's 95. But also, this is a group that's highly capable of rehabilitation, and they have a lot of potential for aging in place, even after a setback like a fall or an injury or an illness.
Yeah. I love how you put that. I mean, they've already proven that they're resilient. And we forget that, don't we? Or I do for sure. Where we'll walk in the door if we're doing a home visit, they're coming in, to the clinic that's so easy to perceive them as weak, fragile. Oh my gosh, they're in their 90s. They're one trip away from it being all over, right? But like by definition, like they have survived this planet for 9 decades, and that is absolutely incredible. I really love that reframe, Catherine. Well, that's awesome. I love this. I love especially where this is headed, especially with this demographic that, continues to grow, and we have so much to learn, right? As, the population kind of skews older, so much to learn, and these normative values for these tests and the cutoffs that are going to continue to come on. Yeah, I just hope everyone watching, listening will get their hands on these. I'll link to all these papers, but keep your eye on this area of research because it's going to continue to grow, and it'll help you better serve these individuals, these amazing folks that are resilient, that have weathered the storm for such a long period of time. If anyone has any questions for y'all, or also think there's probably some people listening that are like, man, I'm kind of curious about this research side, like the clinicians that may be in like Nikki's shoes, right? Or folks that may be curious from the academic side of like, man, how do I do what Catherine's doing? What's the best way for folks to potentially, reach out to y'all if they do have any questions or thoughts?
You want to go first, Catherine?
Just email me. Yeah.
Email? All right. I can put that in the show
Yeah,
notes.
I'll link my email in the show notes too.
Okay, sweet. All right, so email be the best way. I think it's really unique, like with your all's PT school relationship, and then to have the clinician side and the academic side work together. Like, I mean that's such a amazing compliment, right? Because I can imagine that doesn't always happen, right? I imagine like there's a lot of clinicians that don't get involved in research, barely keep up with it or consume it. There's probably a lot of folks that are publishing research that may not have that real life example or their foot in the door of a clinic or having that perspective. So I think that's pretty unique dynamic with y'all. All right. Well, thank you all for your work, this publication, being willing to come on and talk about it. And then anyone watching or listening, all the links, everything will be in the show notes of this video. Appreciate it. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much
Thanks for
for
having
having us.
Yeah.